My name is Bonnie Vorspan. My mother, Sime Meshul, was born August the 15th, 1922, in the shtetl of Shereshev, Poland, which is now in Belarus. There were 2,000 people who lived there. 1,000 were Jews. 42 Jews from Shereshev survived the war, and only a few women, including my mother. She was the oldest of 5 children, 3 brothers and a sister. It was a wonderful life where the Jews and the non-Jews all got along. That changed in June 1941 when the German army stormed their shtetl and forced all the Jews out of Shereshev. My grandmother's brother lived in Pruzhina, which was 10 miles from Shereshev. The whole family walked to Pruzhina, carrying what they could on my grandfather's cart. They went to live with Uncle Label and became part of the Pruzhina ghetto, which housed 10,000 Jews in a very crowded area. The last 4 days of January 1943, the Nazis liquidated the Pruzhina ghetto. 2,500 Jews a day were forced onto 400 sleds that were rounded up from the surrounding area. 6 people were forced onto a sled, no more, no less. And they were taken to the train cattle cars, where they continued their journey to Auschwitz. My mother said her family thought of trying to escape, but realized by the 4th day they would be shot if they didn't comply. At the entrance of Auschwitz, my mother, her youngest brother and sister were herded to the left, and her 2 older brothers and father were herded to the right. My grandmother realized that the horror stories they had heard about what was happening in Auschwitz were actually true and knew what it meant to go to the left line. While standing in the line, going to the gas chamber, she went up to a German Nazi guard and said, "My daughter, my mother, was young and strong and could work for them." The Nazi guard put my mother in the live line. My grandmother was a hero. The German Nazi guard was also a hero at that moment. As she moved to the live line, my mother looked back and saw her younger brother crying. From January 1943 to January 1945, my mother was imprisoned in Auschwitz. Her job was to sit in a circle with other women and take apart the shoes of the prisoners to see if there was any money or jewels hidden. She saw one of her brothers fairly regularly during that time. He worked in the bakery and would smuggle bread to her. He also gave her cigarettes to trade for other items, but she was afraid to do that. When she wasn't feeling well, the other women in her circle would have her lie down until the guards came around. They would do her work for her until she felt better. She saw her father once, and he asked her if her mother was still alive. After the war, it was determined that her father had been transferred to a sub-camp of Auschwitz, and there was no further information about him. In January 1945, the Nazis began to liquidate Auschwitz, forcing her on a death march. She walked many grueling miles until she came to the train cattle cars that would take her to Bergen-Belsen in northern Germany. It was there that she was liberated on April the 15th by British troops. We recently found that her 2 brothers were marched to Buchenwald concentration camp, but there was no further information available. Her uncle Label was liberated from Dachau concentration camp. My mother and her uncle were reunited in Feldfing, a displaced persons camp. She put her name on a list to come to America. One of her cousins saw her name on the list and contacted her Uncle Lou Kaminsky, her father's brother, who was a kosher butcher in the Bronx. He agreed to sponsor her. As the story came down to me, Uncle Lou contacted a congressman who told him that he would be able to get my mother on the first ship out of Europe with Holocaust survivors, the Marin Flasher, if he would sponsor someone else to come, and he did. My mother left Bremen, Germany, and arrived in New York May 1946. She was 24 years old. Uncle Lou and her cousin Mike Drucker met her at the dock, and she recognized them because they looked just like her father. Sylvia, Uncle Lou's daughter, told me my mother came to a loving family in New York. My mother got a job working in the sweatshops of New York, and every day when she finished work, she would go to Uncle Lou's butcher shop, take him by the hand, and he would buy her ice cream, which she loved very much. We always had Neapolitan ice cream in our freezer when we were growing up. In 1947, my mother came to Los Angeles, where her Uncle Label was living. She went on a date with my father, who was from Pinsk, Poland, in August 1948, and they were married 3 months later. My father had served in the American Army, but never fighting in Europe. He was trained as a linotype operator and got a job in Oxnard, California, where my brother Charles and I were born and raised. We grew up knowing about our mother's life during the war. My mother always missed her dear family very much. Charles and I are named after our parents' families. She was always proud of Charles and my accomplishments, graduating from high school and college, going on to get master's degrees, and Charles getting a doctorate in biology and creating a lab that does research on curing Parkinson's disease. She missed her family very much, but she was grateful for the family she had helped create, including her children, her wonderful grandchildren, Ben and his wife Alana, Shana and her husband Aaron, with special mention of Alicia and her husband, Rabbi Ehud Sella. She was even able to meet her first 2 great-grandchildren, Yael and Gavi. Her hopes and dreams of her family.
When I think about the war years, there is one memory that lingers on and on. Most things I've managed to put in the background, but this one memory was the day that my sister died of starvation, and was the first time in my life, well, my short life, I was only 5 and a half, that I saw my father cry. I always thought he was starke. As long as, my father was around, nothing could happen. He was, to me at the time, very big and tall, and as an adult I found out he was only 5'6". But to see him, he was sitting on the floor next to the body and hysterically weeping. And that's one memory I've never been able to erase all these years later. The other thing that struck me, and I think I mentioned it to the rabbi, I was online sending a letter to our senators to support AIPAC, and the thought crossed my mind, oh my goodness, they will know, when a bad time comes, they will know that I'm Jewish. I did it anyway, but it just struck me as strange that was a thought that crossed my mind. And I think the most important thing for me was when I came to the United States, that I didn't have to hide the fact that I was a Jew, that it was okay. But I guess that way back in my mind, there's still a little of that fear. Every time I hear of some event where a Jewish institution was attacked, that fear resurfaces after all these years. Another vivid memory memory is a pleasant memory. I was in the DP camp in Germany, a camp called Zeltsheim. This is after the war, and I had never ever in my life seen a black person. And a black GI came over and gave me a candy bar, and he said he would teach me an English song. And he taught me the song that I know to this day. It was "You Are My Sunshine, My Only Sunshine." And this happened at the school. I was attending the UNRWA school in Zeltsheim, and many times the GIs would come and visit the school and bring us candies and so on and so forth. Another event that I recall, a sad event, when we were in the Gulag, my parents worked. This was in Siberia, and their job was cutting down trees. And I was sent to a school with other children. And at the school, we would get a meal. And my mother always told me, my sister was too young to go to school. My mother always told me, save something and bring it home for Hazel. Well, the walk from the school was a very, very long walk. And even though I had saved something for her in my pocket, I got kind of hungry on the way and started nibbling on it. And when I got back to the place, to our barracks, I didn't have it anymore. And then when she died, I always thought in my child's mind, if I had only brought the food for her, then she would have been okay. Happy events. I was almost 12, 11 and 3/4 when I came to the U.S. And after knowing that I had, other than my parents, I had no family left. On my father's side, my mother's 3 brothers had survived. And so we came to New York, and my father had a large family that came to the United States in the early 1900s. And they were all there to meet us at the port in New York. By the time we came, there was no Ellis Island. All the processing was done before you got on the ship, including a 14-day quarantine to make sure that you had no diseases that you were going to bring into the country. Anyway, it was so amazing to see all these people and that they were all relatives. It was just amazing, including my father's grandmother, my great-grandmother, who had come to this country also in the early 1900s. It was an amazing, amazing feeling to be able to look around and see that I had family. And after the war, my parents had 3 more children. And my father used to say that it is our obligation to replenish all the people that were lost. I did my part too. I had 4. So that's part of the story, and I think I've used up 5 minutes, haven't I?
Hello, my name is Grant Gochin. I'm a member of TRZ. My grandparents were not Holocaust survivors. They left behind in the old country all of their families, and everybody that was left behind was murdered. The family came primarily from Lithuania and Latvia. There were no survivors in Lithuania. My engagement with the Holocaust is taking the Lithuanian government to task for Holocaust denial and Holocaust revisionism. Lithuania is a particularly egregious example of Holocaust distortion. They have taken some of their worst Holocaust perpetrators and elevated them into their national heroes. They've whitewashed their crimes, and this denies the victims any semblance of justice. It negates their victimhood. It negates their suffering. It is murdering their memory a second time. And this cannot be allowed to continue. Lithuania is particularly egregious in this arena. They have a national program and an entire government department dedicated to rewriting the history of the Holocaust through efforts of people such as myself, through support of people such as Rabbi Seller. We have managed to make the world aware of this enormous crime that continues even 75 years after the end of the Shoah. I ask each and every member and each person watching this video to Google Lithuania and the Holocaust and to see what news articles come up. We all need to stand together to recognize and honor the victimhood and the suffering of our families and consign to the sewer of history those that perpetrated these hideous crimes. Without that, there will never be a semblance of justice. Thank you.